Japan has been struggling with massive monsters, called kaiju, that just appeared out of nowhere and started destroying cities like they were made from paper. To defend themselves, the people formed the most OP defense forces of all time, specialized at kicking kaiju's ass. In this world, cleaning up kaiju bodies after the insanely cool, powerful defense squad teams turn them into mincemeat. However, one day, Kafka swallows a parasite kaiju and turns into the most OP kaiju human hybrid in the world. But before that, during a regular day in Yokohama, Japan, out of nowhere, a starts tearing shit up. The emergency kaiju alert immediately sounds and people go into hiding because they can't really do anything against this dollar store Godzilla, which is destroying the town like it was made from Legos. Luckily, very swiftly the 3rd Division of the Defense Corps shows up and starts blasting the kaiju like crazy, turning it into sushi in a matter of minutes. Later on during the day, the cleaning crew, with Kafka being a part of it, comes in and sections off a part of the town to clean up this horrific mess that the 3rd Division left behind. Meanwhile, the 3rd Division, led by Captain Mina Ashiro, Kafka's childhood friend, walks around the town while the people cheer them on like they were on the red carpet. Kafka, however, only looks at Mina from a distance, and the whole cleanup crew gets down to business as they have to clean the entire part of the town with the massive kaiju body in only a week. Kafka, although he has around 3 brain cells altogether, is pretty good at his old Kafka, and makes him go to clean up the kaiju's guts. In the evening, now super tired having spent the whole when he sees Mina on TV, as he remembers how they promised to slay kaiju together when they were young, and realizes that she is the epic captain now while he spends his days cleaning kaiju poop. He starts contemplating how he ended up in such a loser position, but quickly stops himself from getting too ambitious, again, trying to gaslight himself into thinking that his life is fulfilled as it is. The very next morning, Kafka wakes up and goes to work, only to find a new dude there, by the name of Rino Ishikawa, who has joined this work as a little side hustle since he has ambitions of joining the defense force. Kafka's workmates immediately rat him out and say that he once said. Kafka tries to stay positive and explain to Rino that he was simply a wimp and that people were better than him, and he also tells him that he'll understand when he gets older. Rino, however, calls out his bullshit and tells him that he will never give up and that he doesn't want to understand Kafka's logic. Afterwards, they go back to the site to continue cleaning the body and the city, and Rino gets assigned the intestines job, and Kafka loses his shit, only for all of his happiness to be crushed in the on a break. Rino and Kafka are barely keeping it together, not even being able to eat lunch. Kafka gives him some multivitamins and also aggressively tries to wrestling there on a kid's playground. They continue with the cleanup job, and soon for helping his dumb ass get through the day, and tells him that the maximum age limit for joining the defense forces has been raised to 33, meaning that even Kafka he is a much better dude than he thought, and popped out of the ground and went straight to chomp down on poor Rino like he was a Twix bar. Kafka tells him to bolt out of there and notify the defense forces as soon as possible. When he gets to safety, Rino runs, leaving poor Kafka to deal with the spider abomination kaiju that had just popped out of through a narrow corridor, jumping out of a window. As he broke through the glass, Kafka started remembering how his town got turned into rubble when he was younger, and how Mina and him both vowed to become a defense officer. When they to conclude that he should try and strike, the monster used him as a golf ball and hit him away in a second, breaking his leg. Just as the kaiju was about to try out a Kafka lunch platter, Kafka started wondering how it had all come to this. Just then, breaking him out of this contemplative state, Rino comes out of nowhere and with a random pole. Rino has gone full one big ball mode, and he tells Kafka that he would never be able to become an officer had he possible for someone to be such a massive loser. And as he finally gathers the strength and courage and stands up to fight, Captain Mina and the 3rd Division come in, and other members of the 3rd Division tend to Rino and Kafka. Later that night, as they are chilling in the hospital, Kafka ponders about how epic and strong Mina has become and how she has truly gone to a place where he can't reach. This daydreaming contemplating session is interrupted by Rino, who thinks he's cool, and that he really should be a defense officer. Kafka finally realizes that he needs to stop gaslighting himself, and he thanks Rino.
Oh, that was gross!
Kafka struggles and goes through some sort of metamorphosis, before Rino finally pulls down the curtain that is separating the two of them, only to see that Kafka has turned into a super OP looking skeleton kaiju. They both start screaming in panic trying to figure out what is going on. And just then, a random old dude walks by their room and immediately after seeing Kafka in his new form, grabs his phone and calls the defense squad. Meanwhile, as a flashback reveals that Mina and Kafka were great friends, and that Kafka was a super corny kid always telling her that she shouldn't be worried as he will protect her. Mina and the 3rd Division prepare to go to the hospital where Kafka and Reno are still freaking out over what they should do to the world's biggest goofball by the name of Kafka. While this is all happening, Kafka and Reno are trying their best to not give the poor old man a heart attack. And Reno gets the brilliant idea to make Kafka smile at the man to prove he is harmless. This leads to Kafka rivaling Venom for the scariest looking smile of all time. Destroys a chunk of the hospital walls with a touch of his hand. And then again when he makes his escape. They both escape and start running away from the hospital, and Kafka tries his hardest to not make it seem like he is a big scary monster, only to fail every step of the way and unlock an uber disgusting spider mode, also accidentally gobbling up a whole bird in the process of running away. Kafka also figures out that he desperately needs to go take a piss, but realizes that he is missing key pissing equipment, only to start peeing straight out of his nipples.
Damn!
Contain Kafka and a massive kaiju, the same type as the one they fought earlier, pops out of the ground like the start of a giant game of whack-a-mole. Kafka takes this as the perfect opportunity to escape. At the same time, as the kaiju has started destroying everything around him, a poor little girl is trying her hardest to rescue her mother who is stuck underneath some debris, with the kaiju coming in ever closer to them, punching the monster with the force of 1,000 trucks. To comfort the little girl, Kafka and his 3 brain cells try smiling again, only to terrify the poor girl even more.
I'd knock that shit off if I was you.
Reno comes in and helps the mother up, telling the little girl that she is going to be fine. Kafka becomes a Giga Chad and tells Reno to get the mother and the kid out of there while he takes care of the kaiju. In a split second, Kafka punches the massive kaiju as hard as he can and he absolutely annihilates it. He takes her mom home, feeling pretty sad that he only wants to help, but is instead scaring the little girl with his kaiju appearance. It will arrive soon and starts leaving. Describe the kaiju that attacked and she is. However, much to her surprise, the little girl asks her to are watching the news and the public has dubbed him Kaiju number 8. Reno walks in and realizes that Kafka's crazy ass is the first kaiju in history to escape the defense force and that he is literally on everyone's radar in the country. The dudes ask Reno his immediately, and it turns out that he has passed the first round of testing for the defense squad with no problem. Dudes in the office are being true bros and they all agree that they all really want Kafka to have his last shot at finally joining the defense force. That he has passed the first round of the exams too. However, as Kafka ends up stuck in a pretty disgusting half-human half-kaiju form for a second and Reno continues, he tells Reno turns out that Kafka has been training like crazy and is ready to take on the challenge of the second round of the exams. Around 10 days later, Reno and Kafka drive to the place where the second round is going to be taking place in their little minivan. But immediately after they get out of it and step into the parking lot, they see all the other recruits arriving too, with a pretty entitled looking girl called Kikoru, ordering Kafka to move his minivan, while calling him old man. He does not care, and she legit moves towards the van, lifting it up herself using some sort of super suit. She tells them that her hobby is unaliving kaiju, and she even tells poor Kafka that he smells like kaiju, while she grills Reno about what 2 garbage disposal dudes are even doing applying for the defense force, Kafka's super suit. And while he's busy introducing himself to Kikoru and trying to be cool, Kikoru's Alfred-looking butler takes up his parking space anyways. As Kikoru leaves to enter the facility, Reno inside. They finally enter the facility and they start with he realizes that he is getting destroyed by the other candidates. Despite going into overdrive, poor Kafka finishes 219th out of 225 people, while Kikoru blazes past everyone, coming in 5th. She immediately approaches. Reno is super happy that Kafka didn't use his power, and even Kafka seems chillaxed for a while, telling him so hard. However, it only takes a minute for him to go crazy saying that he wishes he'd used it. Meanwhile, Captains Mina and Sashiro Hashina has applied.
Bruh, look at this dude.
At the same time, Kafka and Reno are having discussions of their own, and they are looking at all the other candidates, and talking about what their ranks were in the fitness test. Reno also tells him that this year specifically has insanely strong people applying for the defense squad. They also take a look at the dudes holding the first, second, and third ranks, AI, Izumo, and Iharu. How has gone full nerd mode and skipped several grades and is shaping up to be one of the biggest talents of all time. Showed up for the second time, and he promises to show her up too, to cheer him proposal for the past 2 years, and that they should be fine. They both get super hyped, but only a few moments operator Konomi is measuring the unleashed combat power, which is essentially how much of the suit's power they are able to use of everyone who had put the suit on. Reno's got 8%, Izumo is going crazy with 18%, and AI and Iharu have 15 and 14%. Konomi says that the power often stays lucky that they have even one applicant that's above a 10%. However, everyone's jaw drops when they see that Kikoru has a whopping 46% of unleashed combat power, and they all agree that she is the biggest talent of all time. Reno gets pretty depressed that he only has a measly 8%, but Hoshino reassures him and tells him that you would pretty much need to have a 0% to flop at that point, and that he has never seen a 0 before, activating exactly 0% of his suit's power. Kafka gets super angry as he tries desperately to activate. Hoshino shows up in the room a few moments later and takes the new candidates to take the final test and fight the kaiju in the contained area, while drones keep an eye on them to keep them as safe as possible. Kikoru wastes absolutely no time and starts taking kaijus out left, right, and center. Reno and Kafka start waffling. He is pretty much useless against the kaiju on his own with his 0%. While looking at the kaiju, Kafka goes big brain cleanup sessions and goes around telling people the kaiju's weaknesses and even weakening links Kafka away before smashing him into a wall. Just as Kafka was about to be eaten by the kaiju and Hoshino accepts that he's gonna be gone even though he was so funny, Kikoruji's gonna go take out the rest of the kaiju while he lies on the ground like a loser, as broken as the McDonald's ice cream machine.
Hi, welcome to McDonald's. How may I help you? Hi, can I try the ice cream? No, the ice cream machine is broken. Oh, okay, can I get a large Coke then? The soda machine is also broken. Can I speak to the manager, please? The manager machine is broken too. So what am I supposed?
0.01% of his suit. Hoshino tells him that it's all chill and that he can continue, but that he will definitely get bad. Kafka is ultra happy that he has found the strength to continue as he tells Reno to go on without him. Reno, on the other hand, isn't about to leave his boy behind, but the Reno Kafka unit seems to be doing pretty great supporting all of the other players who are wiping the floor with the kaiju. Kikoru is still being the badass she always is, as she basically isn't even giving anyone else the chance to help and is taking out all of the kaiju on her own. And she even completes the entire exam in no time, given that she's destroyed the cover out of nowhere from underneath the body of the final kaiju. Meanwhile, Kafka and Reno are chillaxing and laying down, waiting back to life in a super disgusting zombie-like, as she asks it what it is. To her massive surprise, the kaiju talks back to her, surprised and out. That very same massive kaiju does not remain destroyed for much longer, as the intelligent kaiju raises it from the dead and instructs it to attack Kikoru. Kikoru desperately tries getting her strength together and she stands up to shoot at the kaiju, but not before being brutally shot down by the intelligent kaiju once again. At the same time, Hoshino and Mina, as well as the operators, are extremely confused by what is going on, as the first approximations come in and it turns out that the revived kaiju now have a fortitude of 6.4, meaning that they are even more powerful now than they were when they were alive and damaged, and that very odd things are happening on her end. Hoshino starts getting worried and realizes that retrieve some of the drone foot newly revived kaiju a piece of their mind. All of the examinees start running away and evacuating, all but Kikli disgusting kaiju that has been revived. She gathers all of her strength and gets up, only to get smashed into the closest building by the kaiju like she was a fly. She goes through a few flashbacks and it is revealed that her daddy is a super strict dude, and even the fact that she got first place at the academy was nowhere near enough to please him. He also tells her that she needs to be the strongest on the battlefield, and that she needs to be perfect for the entire nation's sake, as well as her late mother's sake, which inspires Kikoru to use all of her remaining strength to continue fighting and trying to take the kaiju down. However, very quickly she is almost completely defeated, as her right arm has been fully destroyed, and the kaiju even regenerates its offensive uni-organ, ready to deliver the final blow. Hoshino and Mina turn into two Usain Bolts trying desperately to reach her in time, as Kikoru has accepted to her daddy for not being perfect and failing. Just as the energy Kafka has finally gone full badass mode and has transformed into his kaiju form, ready to turn the kaiju into mincemeat. The remaining examinees are still trying to see a signal flare in the sky, and they all go towards it. As Reno is running away from the monsters, he starts worrying about Kafka since his dumbass has decided to run and go full kaiju mode to try and save people. The disgusting ram-looking kaiju isn't letting them have a moment, and he shoots another energy blast at them. But Kafka blocks it with a new energy source near the massive kaiju. But luckily for Kafka, the energy blast has knocked out the drones, so they don't have a visual on Kafka in his kaiju form. To everyone's surprise, Kafka in his kaiju form has a whopping another small kaiju across the street, and he starts reprimanding Kikoru for not being safe. However, just then, Reno appears and smacks Kafka right on the head, as he was super reckless too. As they argue, Kikoru straight up to investigate the kaiju remains and the whole situation, as he figures out that this kaiju debris is pretty similar to the kaiju remains from Kafka's earlier battle a couple of months prior. A while later, Kafka and Reno are chilling in the hospital, and Kafka is very pissed that he gets this regular hospital while Kikoru gets the best in and thinking he'd wait until he gets stronger and only then talk to her. Meanwhile, Kikoru is going through some flashbacks, feeling to preserve Kafka's identity. Later that night, the weird humanoid kaiju is chilling in a bathroom stall in the cleaning facility Kafka used to wind and shaking Reno like a milkshake, blaming him for the fact that he now has to go through all of this stress while waiting for the exam results. Just then, they both receive mail with their results, and they open them together. Tomorrow, the whole squad is in their new uniforms, waiting to see what's next as they talk about who passed and who didn't. The only one missing is Kafka, and people are pretty sad that he didn't end up passing. Starts the induction ceremony. Kikoru says that they'll all be ready to put their lives on the line, and she is pissed and sad that Kafka isn't their first name. Only then does Kafka realize that he actually said that ought to be something love-related. Kikoru, on the other hand, her drag him out into a diner so they can discuss more and more of the suit activated by the day. With Reno reaching 18% and Kikoru cementing herself as the powerhouse she is and reaching a whopping 50, he starts and his crazy celebration Hoshina, who tells him that he'll still end up flopping and will get fired in 3 months if he continues the way he is going currently. Hoshina is pretty happy that even without him the whole gang already has positive rivalry going on, which is making all of them better. After Kafka trying his hardest to seem cool, but failing miserably. Meanwhile, the girls run into Mina chilling in the laundry room, and Kikoru starts asking her about her muscles, too, and Mina decides to give her a basic workout lesson there, and then. While the dude that's simping over Mina is something they all have in common. So, they all get incredibly jealous when Kafka drops the lore dump on how Mina and him are actually childhood friends. After the girls are getting closer late so that he doesn't fall behind. They talk a little about his promise to Mina and how he one day wants to fight by her side, before Hoshina leaves and happen to them at any time. And just then, an alarm blares, waking everyone up, as Hoshina tells Kafka that he's about to go on his first mission. It turns out that a part of the city is getting evacuated, since a massive kaiju has appeared and has even started spawning during their training. They reach the neutralization area fairly quickly and wait for the colossal kaiju to get closer so they can take it out. Hoshina says that Mina will handle the massive kaiju, and that Pressure realizes that he is actually pretty excited. They all go out to give the kaiju a piece of their mind and do their best at ridding the city of them whilst causing minimal damage. The massive kaiju is moving forward like he was Eren Yeager, and no amount of explosives is causing him any damage whatsoever, blasting the kaiju like crazy and proving to the more experienced soldiers that they are capable of fighting, despite only being rookies. They keep fighting, trying to figure out their biggest weakness, and everyone has grown a lot stronger. Meanwhile, the platoon leader Nakanashima is looking at the new cadets like they were snacks, realizing that it is well and truly an insanely good batch of candidates this year. Kafka has started dismantling a kaiju, and he figures out that the core is not where it's supposed to be, and that the officers with weaker power levels should probably aim to hit them from the side. On top of that, he figures out that they have reproductive organs too. After Hoshina congratulates him, Kafka starts feeling ultra useful, and he starts running around neutralizing all the bodies of the defeated kaiju. They continue blasting the huge kaiju with explosives and bombs, but they are delivering absolutely no damage to it whatsoever. Instead, they decide to try and attack its legs to see if that works. Mina, on the other hand, pulls out her massive gun, then powers up her suit to an insane 96%, and uses it to blast through and wreck the massive kaiju in only 3 blasts. Hoshino walks up to Kafka and tells him that is the power level he will need to reach if he wants to be by Mina's side. But Kafka isn't having it and immediately asks him if he even has the power to match hers. He straight up says that he doesn't, and that he is nowhere near as good at taking out the big kaiju as she is, but that he is insane at taking out the small kaiju. And he immediately proves it by slicing a kaiju next to them up into a billion pieces like he was playing Fruit Ninja. He tells Kafka that he is sick of taking out only the smaller kaiju because his family has been fighting kaiju for a long time. Just then, a billion little kaiju start swarming out of the big kaiju's body and heading straight for the team. They all start fighting the small kaiju, but the operators notice that their power levels are slowly failing since this is still way too hard of a neutralization job for their first mission. Meanwhile, Reno and Iharu are going towards a sector where there are reportedly a large number of kaiju, and they find a random cleanup dude standing in front of a kaiju, and they are super confused. He starts yapping about whether the kaiju are the right choice or not, and as he notices them, he gets up and points his finger at Iharu, and straight up shoots him with an invisible bullet. Luckily, since he is still in his human form, he misses his heart and Iharu survives, but the kaiju dude fully turns back into his kaiju form. He starts thinking of help and tell them that they've encountered a humanoid kaiju. However, the kaiju seems to know a thing or two about electronics and has somehow managed to isolate the area they are in and completely cut them off from using their communicators. The kaiju starts blasting his finger gun at Reno, but he is managing to dodge the shots enough so his vitals don't get hit. This confuses the kaiju quite a bit since he is usually very accurate. But it turns out that the reason why Reno is so good at dodging the attacks is because Kikoru has already prepared him and Kafka by giving them the details of her own battle against him. Iharu's stupid self leaving him alone to face the kaiju, and he is pretty scared considering the fact that even Kikoru couldn't fight this specific kaiju. However, he gathers all of his strength and courage, realizing that the defense officer he wants to be wouldn't hesitate to put his life on the line as he starts fighting the humanoid kaiju head-on. Meanwhile, as he is running away, Iharu realizes that Reno surpassed him like himself since he hasn't evolved a bit from day one and is still reliant on people to save him. Iharu decides that it isn't going to be Reno that saves him, but the other way around, and the kaiju is bamboozled at what kind of argument is going on between them, as he informs them that nothing can leave the barrier he created anyways. Reno and Iharu decide that they have to fight him straight on, as Reno takes the forefront since Iharu is still a bit injured. Luckily, Iharu figures out how to dodge the kaiju's blasts, as they both blast him with special bullets which make it hard for it to move. At point blank, Reno activates. He pokes his head out, shooting Reno with a bunch of bullets that he isn't able to dodge. At the same time, the rest of the squad is battling it out with the smaller kaiju, and Kafka gets informed that they without unaliving him, as he blocks every single one of Iharu's bullets and immobilizes him. He grabs Reno and starts dragging him away, with poor Iharu doing his best to grab the gun in front of him as a desperate attempt to save Reno. However, the gun turns out to be broken pieces. He receives a Saitama level 1 punch from the back by Kafka, which blows his head clean off. Reno starts blaming himself that Kafka has had to transform again, and both the kaiju and Iharu are super confused that another humanoid kaiju has appeared. Kafka places Reno down, ready to throw hands with the humanoid kaiju once again. Before going to fight, Reno asks him to be careful, and Kafka slowly approaches the kaiju. The kaiju starts asking Kafka why he is getting in his way if he is also a kaiju, and tells him that he would love to take his body and use it, just before using one of his invisible blasts and shooting Kafka straight through the chest. Reno can't believe that someone has managed to hurt Kafka in his kaiju form. Shoot poor Reno and Iharu over and over again, and he goes full on berserk mode, punching away, destroying the kaiju faster than he can repair himself. He even tries to retreat, but Kafka doesn't let him, as he continues blasting him with his insanely powerful punches. He hits him so hard that the kaiju flies miles away, and Kafka follows him closely, going straight for the exposed core in his torso. Kikoru is still defeating the small kaiju left, right, and center, as she is wondering how far Kafka went to rescue Reno and Iharu, since he left and transformed immediately upon hearing that they were in danger. The humanoid kaiju gets just enough time to escape, telling Kafka that he will unalive him next time, as he has figured out that he behaves like a human despite looking like a kaiju. As Kafka jumps into the air to check out where the kaiju went, he sees that poor Reno and Iharu are getting medical attention, and be a really tough battle lead to unalive kaiju number 8. Kafka finds himself in a pretty crappy situation because he realizes that he can't exactly just use his fists on Captain Hoshina. However, Hoshina doesn't really give him a lot of time to think and slashes him across the chest at the speed of light. Very quickly, Kafka realizes that he won't be able to survive if he holds back, as he tries his best to defend himself from the barrage of slices that Hoshina is throwing his way. He figures out that he simply can't harden his body fast enough to protect him against all of the slashes, and Hoshina even manages to get such a big slice in that Kafka's core reveals itself. Kafka manages to regenerate, but he realizes he'll be able to hold on much longer at that tempo. They fight, and Hoshina realizes that Kafka is at least at a fortitude level of 8.0, and that he also gets a super weird feeling from him. The fight continues and Hoshina throws out a double attack, slicing Kafka's leg clean off. This attack, however, proves to be a decoy, as Kafka, on the other hand, isn't as dumb as he may seem, and he predicted that this was going to happen. Grabbing Hoshina's blade with a newly formed mouth on the place, tries to get to Iharu and Reno, but Kikoru stops him and starts shouting at him, telling him that it was super stupid to get into contact with other officers, especially Hoshina, since they could easily trace even the slightest clue back to him. At the same time, Hoshina is feeling pretty down that he let kaiju number 8 escape, and Mina decides that this is the perfect opportunity to take a picture of him. She asks him whether the kaiju was strong, and he tells her that he assumes that it's a day kaiju, a special ultra powerful type of kaiju, which would make number 8 the first one in 5 years. However, he concludes that nothing made sense about the battle as Kafka punched his sword instead of him, and he realizes that number 8 must not be the type to outright attack people, since there have been 0 casualties due to his actions up to that point. He also figures out that he fought much more like a human than a kaiju, and Mina interrupts his pondering, telling him to get some rest, as it doesn't really matter what type of kaiju it is, since it is their job to neutralize it anyhow. Hoshina agrees, and just then he gets word from Ikaruga the operative that the humanoid kaiju had a full-on human form when he was found, much to the worry and surprise of everyone. Meanwhile, the humanoid kaiju is walking down the middle of a road in his human form like a madman. Just then, a random car stops next to him and the driver exits the car to see if everything is alright. However, the kaiju straight up gobbles the dude up, taking his form, as he drives around thinking how he could beat kaiju number 8. The very next day, Reno finally wakes up and he finds Kafka and Kikoru at his side. He is very happy that Kafka is okay, and Kafka hits him on the head, telling him that that should be his line. Reno starts thanking Kafka for saving Iharu and him. However, he seems to have lost a few brain cells during the battle, since he doesn't figure out that Iharu is literally right next to him in the very same room, and can hear him. Iharu, on the other hand, has no idea why Reno is thanking Kafka since it is kaiju number 8 that saved them. After all, Kikoru and Kafka somehow do their best to save the situation, blabbering about how Kafka was helpful nonetheless, since he was the one who found the reproductive organs on the kaiju. Iharu somehow buys this and thanks Kafka too. However, he is still ultra confused about why a kaiju helped them, and he daydreams about how cool it was when kaiju number 8 knocked the head clean off of the humanoid kaiju, now being dubbed kaiju number 9. Kafka isn't quite done with trying his best to out himself, so he blushes, much to Iharu's confusion, but they somehow manage to get out of this situation, too. A while later, Iharu and Reno are finally released from the hospital, and the rest of the gang are all waiting for them in a massive room, congratulating them on their return, ready to all have a dinner party together. A chef and his team comes out of nowhere and reveals the most bussin' looking food the world has ever seen. It turns out that Kafka asked Haruichi to organize this dinner party, not knowing that he is the literal heir to Izumo Tech, and is even richer than Kikoru and her family. Hoshina appears and asks everyone to enjoy and have fun, and Reno starts thanking Hoshina for getting this together, but Hoshina just tells him to wait. In a split second, everyone starts arguing with each other over what they could have done better, and where everyone is lacking, since they all want to become stronger. Kafka even manages to somehow get into an arm wrestling contest with AI, and all chaos is breaking loose. After the fighting, the chef thanks Haruichi for the opportunity, and asks him about his father, to which Haruichi responds by telling him that he hasn't seen his father in a long time. Just then, AI appears, and Haruichi starts worrying whether he overheard anything. Back at the dinner, Hoshina stops all the pointless fighting and announces that Kafka is finally getting promoted to full officer, and everyone goes crazy congratulating him and celebrating with him. The next day, Mina officially gives him the title of full officer as he promises to do everything right. Just as he was about to leave, she tells him to not rest yet, as he still has a long way to go before reaching her power level. Kafka realizes that she actually does remember, and immediately forgets all his training, referring to her by her name instead of her title, and he instantly gets punished with 50 push-ups. He also learns that Hoshina is in charge of dealing with Kaiju number 8 and 9, as well as the fact that he was the one who recommended him for full officer. That evening, as Kafka is studying in the library alone, he goes to stretch his legs, finding crazy Hoshina is training like a madman, and realizes that he is recreating his battle with him step by step. He tells Kafka that he is training his hardest to be able to slice the head clean off of Kaiju number 8, and Kafka tells him that he will do everything in his power to help him, to which Hoshina responds by saying that he has only 1% of his expectations for the dude with the 1% power level.
Boom. Roasted.
At the same time, in the clouds above their base, a flock of bird-like kaiju with a reddish humanoid-looking kaiju on top of one of them prepare to descend onto the base.
This is where the fun begins.
After his brief encounter with Kafka in the training room, Hoshina is researching the out of Kaiju number 8, thinking about how he behaves strangely similar to humans. He has absolutely no idea what is going on with the kaiju, and why Kaiju number 9 has a human disguise. Meanwhile, Kafka is alone on the balcony, ready to continue becoming stronger, happy that he has finally managed to become an officer. As he is preparing to go to bed to prepare for the next day, fire starts raining from the sky and meteor-level strikes are absolutely pulverizing the base. Everyone notices immediately, and Hoshina instantly requests info from the operators on what is going on. They tell him that it seems to be an air attack from a bunch of kaiju, all super powerful with fortitudes over 6. As Mina isn't there, he takes control and orders everyone to get ready to fight. Instantly, he realizes that something is off as they haven't received any info on the attack being spread out anywhere else, which would mean that the attack is focused directly on the base. Kafka has no idea what is going on, as he witnesses a massive amount of flying kaiju annihilating the base, and he immediately realizes that something must be very wrong, since all of the kaiju are wyvern-type kaiju, and they are well known for operating exclusively alone. As everyone is preparing for the fight, Kafka relays this information to Hoshina, telling him that this is extremely worrying, since this means that there must be something or someone with enough power to make them all swallow their pride and fight together, and enough intelligence to act with a goal in mind. Hoshina spots the very menacing night-looking kaiju leader, and he hangs up on Kafka, getting ready to fight. The kaiju immediately starts yapping, and asks Hoshina if he is the strongest human at the base. Given the fact that Mina isn't around, he says that he is, and the kaiju concludes that Hoshina will be his prey. The operators tell him that its fortitude level is 8.3, making him a Dai kaiju, and Hoshina tells the rest of the squad to all focus on fighting the other kaiju, while he focuses on this one. The kaiju, however, doesn't want to wait a second longer and straight up attacks Hoshina in the middle of him giving out orders. Hoshina manages to somehow dodge the first 2 attacks, and the kaiju proceeds to open his mouth super wide and straight up starts shouting. All of the other kaijus react to this and start shouting too, which Hoshina interprets as proof that the kaijus are well and truly here to attack the base. However, he doesn't have a lot of time to think about it since the meteor strike power hitting kaiju is out for him and is attacking like crazy. Hoshina somehow managed to dodge every single one of the kaiju's attacks, realizing that one hit would be enough to take him out. He also realizes that its skin is even harder than number 8. Meanwhile, the squad is shooting the crap out of the other kaijus, but it is causing absolutely no damage. Kafka pulls some exclusive kaiju cleanup knowledge out of the back of his head and remembers that these exact kaiju appeared in 2003, and tells the rest of the squad that their cores should be on their backs, as he devises a plan in which a person acts as a decoy, while the other shoots the core out. However, the kaiju aren't that dumb, and when Haruichi and AI try this out, one of the other kaiju protects the one they tried to take out. Not knowing what to do, Kikaru appears out of nowhere and slices at the kaiju with her massive axe, taking it out from the front. As it turns out, Mina and Hoshina crafted this weapon specifically for her as she has incredible potential. She starts taking the kaiju out left and right, using her new massive axe that is made from the uni organ of a super powerful kaiju from a few years ago. It turns out that this axe is no regular axe and has a bunch of super cool skills and power-ups, as Reno and her work together to annihilate as many kaiju as possible. The rest of the squad start using the technique and fighting the kaijus as a team as well. Meanwhile, Hoshina is still fighting the red cyclops-looking kaiju and he realizes that this thing is actually enjoying the fight, which kaijus aren't supposed to do. He successfully manages to lure it into the training area, and just then the kaiju tells him that he can't wait to eat him since he is more powerful than even some kaiju that he has fought. Just like that, he approaches Hoshina and manages to get a punch in, launching him half the street away. However, as it turns out, Hoshina has awakened his full 92%, and has managed to slice the kaiju's arm off with ease. At the same time, the rest are all fighting the other kaiju, and Kafka is running around saving people, while Reno and Kikoru take on the kaijus like the dream team they are. The senior officers get deployed to the battle too, and Kafka is ecstatic that they're getting some help from them. Hoshina is still doing his best fighting the kaiju, and is using the micro cracks in its armor to slice at its limbs, which the kaiju doesn't find fun at all. Just as he starts thinking that he can predict Hoshina's movements and slices, he gets two massive slashes straight across his chest, and he loses almost all of his limbs, including his head, which is hanging on by a thread. Just then, the kaiju starts truly having fun, and he turns on ultra healing mode, regrowing all of his limbs in a second. The fight continues, but the kaiju is once again getting sliced like a roll of sushi, and Hoshina even manages to reveal its small core. He slices at it and everyone thinks that the kaiju is defeated. However, he turns into a massive version of himself, and the fight is getting more dangerous than ever. The operator figures out that poor Hoshina can't handle such a massive kaiju on his own, but Hoshina is eager to prove her wrong, running around on its massive body, slicing away, and doing the best he can against it. However, his full suit power has been released for too long, and it starts overheating, so the operator tells him that he has to turn it off quickly. Hoshina decides to try and fight the kaiju nevertheless, but then he gets swatted away like it was nothing. He starts remembering the first time he was told to give up on the defense squad, since the only thing he could really use was a sword. Realizing that the kaiju hits like a truck, he manages to get up and immediately starts thinking about what he could do against such a strong enemy. He continues doing what he does best, slicing and dicing, but the kaiju heals faster and faster. A flashback reveals that it was actually Mina that asked Hoshina to join her division, after everyone else told him that he is not good enough as he can only use a blade. She tells him that it is exactly him that she needs, since she is fully useless with a blade, but sick with guns. Hoshina is still trying his hardest as he knows that Mina left the base to him, but the kaiju is simply much stronger than him, and he grabs poor little Hoshina, ready to eat him. Kafka runs at them and starts transforming, despite Reno telling him not to, as he values the lives of his comrades much higher than his hidden identity. Luckily for all of them, Mina's voice comes across the comms and tells them that they've been doing a great job. Laughing, Hoshina tells the kaiju that he has lost the fight, as Mina blasts the kaiju wide open with one of her massive gun blasts. He tells the kaiju that he is the vice captain of the base, and that his job is to hand the baton over to the captain. Mina continues blasting him, but he is still regenerating insanely fast. They realize that his core is on his back, and Kikoru comes up to him too, with both her and Hoshina, who has barely managed to reactivate 63% of his suit, slicing at the kaiju to open up a path for Mina to blast at its core. Just as the kaiju was about to gobble Hoshina up once again, Mina blasts its head clean off, finally defeating it once and for all, as everyone else manages to get the upper hand on the rest of the kaiju too. Kafka starts crying like a baby after seeing the awesomeness of Mina and Hoshina, and Reno tells him that they still have a way to go. As they are preparing to deal with the rest of the kaiju, they realize that a massive kaiju bomb is hanging over them, looking ready to pop like a planet-sized pimple, as the fading massive kaiju tells Hoshina that the fight will be a draw after all. However, as none of them know what to do, without any hesitation, Kafka runs straight at the massive kaiju cluster, transforming in front of everyone. Everyone goes crazy, with Hoshina super angry at himself that he turned a blind eye to the possibility that Kafka was kaiju number 8, since he liked him so much. The operator tells them that she reads a fortitude level of 9.8, as Kafka feels apologetic towards everyone who kept his secret safe. He launches straight towards the cluster and punches it up and away from the base in the city. Then he falls back to the ground as the cluster explodes in the stratosphere, causing a massive blast of wind that pummels the base. Kafka realizes that he is in a very bad situation, as Mina and the rest of the defense squad take him into custody. A while later, the whole board of the defense squad is having a meeting, and none of them can quite believe that a kaiju has been a part of the force this whole time, and a Dai kaiju at that. They start discussing whether they should tell the media about the whole situation, and conclude that it would probably be best to keep the entire situation under wraps, like they have been doing with number 9. Many ideas get thrown around that he should be used as a living weapon, and one dude even says that he heard about a country experimenting with kaiju to human tissue transplants. The discussion gets who also happens to be Kikoru's dad, decides what to do with him. Meanwhile, poor Kafka is sitting in a room all alone, restrained, left to think about what will happen to him now that his secret has been revealed. Just as he starts thinking about how close he got to being next to Mina, she enters the room since he had done so much to protect his secret. He slowly enters the truck, and just as the doors are about to close up behind Kafka, Reno steps out of line and tells him that he has faith that Kafka will return. On the inside, he immediately felt that it was exactly his type of thing to do. Much to Kafka's surprise, Mina tells him that no one in the 3rd Division thinks of him as an enemy, and says that she will do everything she can to convince the board that he is human so that he can be saved. Kafka sits down and Mina restrains him, telling him that he is about to be transferred to the Ariake maritime base, and Kafka interrupts her and asks her whether he can still try to be next to her, to which she responds by telling him that she will always be waiting. And Kafka starts bawling his eyes out. Everyone salutes as the truck leaves, and a bald dude higher up that Hoshina questions this, and Hoshina reassures him that they were just saluting to Mina, not Kafka. A while later, as he was restrained in before. A week later, the whole rest of the squad starts talking about how unbelievable it is that Kafka turned out to be kaiju number 8. They start talking about how Kafka saved their lives, and AI says that what happens to Kafka is, after all, the Neutralization Bureau's decision. Haruichi agrees, realizing how dangerous it would be for the information that there is a human kaiju hybrid to go out in public, since it would lead to everyone questioning whether the person next to them is potentially a kaiju. Meanwhile, Mina has tasked the operator to give her all she can on Kafka, and Hoshina is talking to Ryu about how he wants Kafka to be back as soon as possible, since he dared to hold back when they were fighting. A while later, Kikoru enters her dad's office, ready to beg him to spare Kafka's life, as he has saved hers. Isao interrupts her immediately and asks her whether she definitely, but stops as come back. At the same time, it is decided that the 3rd Division base can no longer be used, so they will all be split up in separate bases. On top of that, Mina also lets everyone know that the brass is pretty worried after the sudden appearance of both Kaiju 8, 9, and at the same time. Horichi suspects that the splitting up may be due to the fact they would want everyone who had contact with Kafka to be under surveillance, but Mina says that this has been under consideration anyways, unrelated to Kafka, while Reno immediately says that he'll do it. After this, Haruichi ponders calling his dad, and AI is desperately doing his best to try to get his old army commander to introduce him to anyone important who would be able to help Kafka. Whilst Haruichi is a little surprised, AI reminds him that he told him that he wouldn't want to lose anyone. Kafka is still sitting in his room, all alone, thinking that he has to prove that he is human so that he would be able to go back to the 3rd Division, and he concludes that the first step would be getting the Neutralization Division to hear him out. Just as Kikoru and the rest of the board watch from a distance. Immediately Kafka starts shouting at him that he is not a kaiju, and Isao orders the board to release his restraints. They try to talk him out of it, tell Kafka is a Dai kaiju class. He would have broken out of them anyways, had he wanted to listen to him. And just as he starts his sentence, Isao immediately shoots him, and Kafka, which Isao responds by taking 2 massive weapon gloves, made from kaiju number 2, and starts blasting Kafka, telling him that he is free to get unalived in the human form. Immediately he manages to take Kafka's arm clean off, and Kafka is forced to transform almost fully. He notices that his body is reacting to because Isao's armor and gloves are made out of the material gathered from the second kaiju to ever be given a name. Isao continues blasting Kafka with his gloves, and Kafka's body can't take a lot more of this beating. So, as Isao goes on to deliver a final blow, Kafka transforms fully and blocks him, much to Kikoru's really be himself at all, as he starts shouting, and gets a power-up, with the disgusting parasitic bug that entered Kafka's system taking full control of his body with the single intention of unaliving the captain. While all of this is going on, Rino and Iharu are in the gym talking about how they feel now that they're being transferred to different units, and whether they are worried about Kafka. Rino says that he is training so he can protect Kafka the next time they see each other, instead of it being the other way around, and Iharu decides to train hard too. Just then, the senior squad leaders enter the gym and tells them that today is the day the neutralization squad will decide what to do with Kafka. They also say that Mina has also gone to HQ, which they are sure means that there is good news to be heard. At the same time, Mina enters the boardroom, and she is told to wait until Isao is done with Kafka. Kafka has gone insane and is attacking Isao like crazy, which Isao describes as animal-like attacks, since Kafka isn't even paying attention to the opening he produces after each attack. Kikoru tries to remind him that he's human, but Kafka doesn't seem to be in control of his body, and is attacking Isao with all he's got. Even Kafka himself is trying to stop his body from attacking, desperate to prove that he is human, as Isao realizes that using human logic in this fight will only get him unalive, since Kafka's body seems prepared to destroy itself to deal a strong attack, knowing it will just heal up. Kafka delivers a bunch of consecutive punches and Isao only survives due to the number 2's shield, as he fights back with a force blast, launching Kafka's body across the entire arena. However, as it turns out, the core is missing from his body, and behind Isao a brand new Kafka regenerates just from his core, having used the body as a decoy. Even Kafka has started to realize that fighting like that is too much and that he isn't going to survive much longer if it continues. Members of the board, overseeing the fight from afar, comment on how Isao must be pushing number 8 to the fullest, since he easily could have destroyed him back when Kafka was in his human form. Kikoru realizes that this must mean that Isao is giving Kafka a chance to survive, and remembers their conversation from earlier. Meanwhile, AI and Haruichi stand on a rooftop and AI tells him how he came to the defense squad to save lives, only to have his life saved by Kafka. He also says that people should be judged by their actions, and Haruichi agrees, and decides to call his dad. Kafka starts winning his battle against Isao as he manages to injure him, while Kafka himself is desperate to stop his body from fighting. Isao attempts to fight Kafka to the best of his abilities using number 2's power, but Kafka's body grabs him and starts Hulk smashing him against the floor. Kafka fights against the parasite in his own body to stop himself from unaliving Isao, who accepts that all hope that he had has been lost, as he waits for the final punch. In his own mind, Kafka starts falling deeper and deeper into the void, as Mina comes out of nowhere, grabs his hand, and tells him that she will always be waiting for him. This gives him enough strength to redirect his Ultra Saitama punch and punch his own core out instead. He even manages to get his face through the kaiju skin and says that he is not kaiju number 8, but Kafka Habino, and he faints, reverting back to human form. Immediately, Isao's guards surround Kafka and one of them aims his massive sword at him. Isao orders him to put the weapon away, and asks for the medics to take Kafka in immediately, admitting that he was more than he expected. A couple of hours later, Isao goes to the boardroom, ready to deliver his opinion on Kafka to everyone, including Mina. They tell her that her testimony will have nothing to do with Kafka's fate, since they have already almost reached a final decision. She starts making her case on Kafka, saying that she will leave the decision up to the professionals, and instead speak only about what kind of officer Kafka is. She proceeds to tell them of what a hard worker he is, and how many times he has saved them, or helped the entire squad. She tells them that he had failed the entrance exam 12 times, and that he has never stopped trying to help people, despite having a whopping 0% of the suit's power activated. She also says that out of all the people she knows, Kafka is the one that hates giving up the most, and cares for others more than anyone. She remembers when Kafka consoled her when their town got destroyed when they were young, and says that he has the most humanity out of all the people she knows. She continues by saying that his heart is the biggest deciding factor when it comes to what kind of officer he is. The board members start complaining, saying that heart is a too undefined concept, and that she shouldn't try to cover for her officer like that. After Mina leaves, they all try to quickly come to a decision to dispose of him, revealing that listening to Mina was a pure formality they wanted to cover so that they couldn't be accused of acting hastily. Meanwhile, Kafka is in a healing tank, and he is thinking about how he hated himself for not being able to do anything to help Mina when they were younger, and how he promised to make the kaiju pay for making her cry. However, when he saw that he was turning into a kaiju in both body and mind, he decided that he would rather get unalived as a human. A while later, he wakes up in a hospital room, surprised that he is alive, and he finds Isao sitting next to him. He lets him know that he isn't there to hurt him, and Kafka immediately starts saying that he could have never faced Kikoru had something happened to Isao. In a split second, he realizes that him being alive must mean that they've come to accept him as a human, and asks Isao if that's the case. Isao tells him that it has been decided that he is a kaiju, and that most people aren't in favor of him living. But it was actually him that presented the idea of using Kaiju number 8 to fight for them. Isao adds that he is sure that he can be controlled, as he has been doing missions with the 3rd Division for months, and he says that he isn't sure that he could be made into very powerful weapons. Considering the amount of Dai Kaiju that have appeared, he decides that this is the right thing to do, if they are to protect their country against what might come in the future. Isao tells Kafka that he will have to prove his worth to survive, to which Kafka responds by saying that he still thinks of himself as a defense officer, and that he will work to make it so everyone sees him as such. Meanwhile, everyone gets the news that Kafka isn't going to be unalived, and everyone is incredibly happy, with Hoshina specifically thinking about how much harder things are going to be in the future, and Kafka thinking about Mina. At the same time, in Kafka and Reno's old workplace, the dudes are chilling and playing online chess, noticing that someone named Number 9 has been topping the leaderboards recently. It turns out that this mysterious Number 9 is none other than Kaiju Number 9, who has been playing chess like crazy, having figured out humanity's intellectual level. He realizes that their intellect on their own is not very spectacular, but their special power is the ability to accumulate knowledge across generations. Just then, it turns out that Kaiju Number 9 is a part of a much larger organization, and they are planning another attack on the defense squad base, moving on to the next phase of their plan, working to bring back into their hands the Kaiju power that fell into the hands of the humans. This brings us to the end of Kafka's The Overpowered Kaiju Number 8. Thanks for sticking around until the end, you absolute legend. Like, subscribe, and click on the screen to watch some of our other awesome Stay AniGeek.